Hi guys, so today we're gonna talk about mobility. We're gonna kind of talk about how mobile do you need to be to play good golf, and it's a bit of a controversial one. I think there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of gimmicky stuff. There's a lot of screenings that might not be the most useful to. I think is how it transfers over to the golf game. And that's kind of what we're going to dig deep into today and dive into that and what research has been done around those topics and see kind of how useful it is. Joe, do you want to start us off? How mobile do you need to be to play good golf?
First of all, I'll say, well done to us for getting to episode 2.
Thank you.
Because getting to episode 2 is an achievement. Most of the time, like I've obviously had thoughts of making a podcast in the past. Never really got round to doing it, and we did the first one. We didn't die. No one died.
No one.
As far as we know.
No one got hurt. Hopefully.
If anyone died, let us know. Again, send a message to Sam. Let him know. But yeah, we're back, episode 2, and I think what we can do today is, as Sam said, we can start to dive into some specific topic now, so we can start to really give you guys an insight into some of these areas that we kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis. Some of these areas that, like Sam said, there's some sketchy stuff out there. And hopefully we can kind of provide some more like reassuring information, maybe some scientifically backed stuff, some stuff that we've done with people that we've seen a difference of. So yeah, as Sam said, we're going to start with mobility, which is one of my favourite subjects to talk about. Something that I probably have a conversation with someone daily about. Absolutely. At some point in the day I'll talk about mobility. And yeah, we're going to go to the question, do you need to be mobile to play golf, which I think is a fantastic question. Like, it's something that people say to me, like, what's the point? Quite often. Do I need to do that? Or the other question I have is when I get a really good golfer that comes to me and their body moves awful.
Yeah.
That's a hard question to answer. Like,
it is.
When someone's playing off +3
yeah.
And winning county events and doing this stuff and they move awful, how do you tell that player that, maybe their body's holding them back?
Yeah.
It's hard. I think the biggest thing to cover, from my end to start, is we are not obviously going to ever say that golf is not skill-based. Like, golf is 100% skill-based.
Absolutely.
But your body definitely has a big part of that. So, I'm going to give a quick answer and then we're obviously going to dive in. I think you do need to be mobile to play very good golf. But I think you can also play good golf without being mobile.
Yeah.
End of podcast.
Done. Thank you guys. We'll see you on episode 3. No, I agree. I think it also depends. I feel like I'm going to get sick of myself saying it depends, but I feel like it's going to be my answer for pretty much every topic we talk about. But
it's a great cop-out answer.
It depends on the individual. It depends on the level they're playing. It depends on their potential pain thresholds and different things like that. I have been absolutely shocked. I have done physical screenings for clients, assumed in my head what their handicap could be off the back of that, and then been told a ridiculously low handicap and just thought to myself, you are an entirely skilled golfer. What could we be if you were moving a bit more and training like an athlete?
Yeah.
But then vice versa, I've seen it the other way. I've seen people pass every sort of screening that we do here, but be a 20 handicapper.
Yep.
So I go back to it. It depends.
Yeah, I think with that, like, I would say, just on the contrary to that, like, say for example, if you get let's say for example, we test a really, really good player, like, high level pro, high level amateur, whatever it is, and let's say we go through the investigation and we spot that they might have some lack of mobility in certain areas, and we can throw pain into this as well. Like, let's say they've got lack of mobility and they might be experiencing pain. I think for those guys that are still playing to a very, very high level, I think for most of them, they then do still complain of certain things, like certain things in their swing that they have always had that they've not been able to overcome, a certain bad shot that they might experience, a certain pain that they might have, a certain weakness they might have, a lack of speed that they might want to get to, whatever. So although those guys are playing at such a high level, and it looks like their body should really be holding them back a little bit further, I think they all still would say that there's something in there that isn't quite right in the way that they do things. Where I think if you look at even the best players in the world, they probably don't have as many of those.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, I've not had the privilege of working with the best players in the world. I would like to, As far as I know, they do still struggle with some stuff. But I think understanding that it's a balance of skill and movement capability is probably going to be the key there.
Definitely.
So let's say someone wants to come and see you, Sam. They come in and they say, you know, the question I get all the time, I'm really unflexible. I can't touch my toes.
Yes.
I can't touch my toes, Sam.
Yes.
Like, how the hell am I going to get to scratch if I can't touch my toes? How is that even possible? I don't know. I'll give my view.
Yeah.
I think the only reason to be able to touch your toes for the golf swing is to be able to put the ball out the hole.
I mean, 100%. It's like you read my mind there. As soon as we're talking about mobility, there's a few clients that just come to the top of my head that come in and have literally said that. And I think it's just a standard one. It's them not having too much awareness of different types of stretches or other things that they might fail at, but they just know that their hamstrings are sore, their back's tight, they can't touch their toes. Yeah. And they think that is holding their golf game back.
So just to expand on that, which I think will be a really useful conversation for people to hear, and just to get some of these terms cleared up. So what would you say is, for me, I would say touching your toes is more flexibility than is mobility. But how would you define those two terms? Like, how would, if someone, if you were talking about mobility or talking about flexibility, like how would you define those two? Because I think that can help us kind of lead this conversation a little bit further.
100%. I don't see how flexibility, unless it's kind of dependent on pain. I think I would only look at flexibility with clients if pain becomes an issue. With not really any of my clients, one of the goals would be, right, let's get more flexible. It's about let's get more mobile and stable around that movement. So I think let's stick with with touching our toes. Someone might not be able to touch the toes because their hamstrings are stiff, or their back and their kind of global flexion is stuck at a certain point. I wouldn't necessarily say that they might not be immobile. I'd say that there's probably things around that could still be mobile. It just depends. I would never use touching your toes as an example of being mobile. I don't think so anyway. That's kind of... yeah. What would you say? How would you define? What would you say separates the two?
Yeah, I think if anyone that's done any mobility with me, in the past, I always say that mobility is a combination of loads of different things going on, right? So I always say that mobility is your ability to move.
Yeah.
I think your ability to move with control is a big part of that as well.
Absolutely.
Which like links in some stability stuff and whatever. But I think if you think of the mobility as your ability to move, there's loads of things that go into your ability to move. Flexibility of which, to clarify a little bit, I would generally say that flexibility is muscle only. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of tendon, a little bit of ligament, maybe. But if you think about the muscle of your hamstring and think how flexible is that muscle, that's where I'd put flexibility. But your mobility of your ability to, for example, bend over and pick something off the floor, I would probably link as mobility. But there's going to be loads of different factors that go into the mobility, where flexibility generally is kind of a muscle. So I think I always like using the term mobility instead, simply because I think it encompasses so much more than just the flexibility of the muscle. Yeah. And I think when we're looking at improving mobility, I like to look at all these areas. Like, when for example I'm doing stuff with a roller or a ball, or all the different tools I like to use, sometimes it's just a case of actually getting the skin to move better over the muscle. Yeah. It's not improving flexibility. No. But it's improving how you move, right? Yes. If you imagine wearing a wetsuit, like you don't move very well in a wetsuit, right? Like you're going to be stuck down, and sometimes that happens to your skin. If you're not very well hydrated, if you don't move very well, sometimes our skin just gets kind of stuck down on top of the tissue. Yeah. So although we're not improving flexibility when we do that, we're improving our ability to move because we're allowing things to slide and allowing things to move.
Absolutely.
In the same way, we can mobilize capsules of. We can mobilize a hip capsule. It's not improving our flexibility of the muscles around the hips, but it's allowing us to move differently. So I think it's a question. Most people when they come to me, and probably for you as well, they always say, I'm not flexible. Yeah. I would probably say the same to you. I don't really care for flexibility. I care more about the mobility, because if we look after the mobility, the flexibility kind of looks after itself, right? And that's going to be one piece of the puzzle. Might be the flexibility, but sometimes we get people in. Let's say, for example, touching the toes. I can get someone in here that can't get anywhere near their toes, and within 5 minutes I can get them touching their toes just by improving the way that they move. Right? Like
release, or
maybe even
whatever
some
it
release.
might be.
It might just be for them understanding how to hinge at the hip. You know, that's we've not improved the flexibility of their hamstrings. We've just shown them how to actually move. Right. So I think I think we'll probably dig deeper into this, but like the quality of testing for mobility. If we're saying, you know, how important is it to be mobile to swing the golf club or play good golf? You know, how we test that, I think is going to be key. What even is a good level of mobility? Yeah. What is normal? Yeah. I hope that makes sense.
I think so. I think it's a tough one with people misunderstanding the difference between the two, and I think that's what we're trying to, in this episode, want to explain a little bit better for people, that most people don't really understand what mobility is. It gets lumbered in with flexibility, and it all becomes a little bit of a muddle. So we hopefully in today's episode explain a little bit more what we mean about being mobile for golf, because like you said, touching the toes, it's not going to help us shoot better scores.
Not necessarily, no. And I think also when we say that with the mobility, like, and this probably goes on to some testing now, but I think your ability to move is also going to be completely relevant for what it is you're trying to do, right? Absolutely. Like if you're trying to run, your level of mobility requirement is going to be different if you're trying to do rock climbing, for example, or if you're trying to play football. Like there's different requirements depending on the task. You know, most people can walk. Most people don't walk well, but they can walk, right? So it's like, you know, are you mobile enough to walk? Yes. Are you mobile enough to walk perfectly? Probably not, but it doesn't really matter, right? When we're talking about golf, are you mobile to swing the golf club? Well, yeah, you play golf, so you can swing the golf club, but are you mobile enough to swing it well? Maybe not. Yeah. And that's where we're trying to dig into, you know, what is good enough, and what is, you know, acceptable, or what is maybe putting you at a little bit of risk.
Yeah, perfect. So let me fire a little question at you, Joe. We've got someone coming into the studio saying they think they're not mobile enough, not flexible enough to play golf. Where are we starting? What would you like to look at first with them?
For me, I always dig into the question. So I want to have a look at their golf swing first of all. I want to see what's going on. I want to know, you know, are they working on anything? Are they having lessons? What level are they at? Because I think that really leads us down to some questions. Right?
Absolutely.
If someone says, I'm not flexible for golf, but they're playing off +2, you say, okay, well, we know what we're dealing with, right? If they say we're not flexible for golf, I've been playing for 10 years and I just can't get any better. I'm playing I'm a 15 handicapper. I've been having lessons, you know, twice a month for the last 10 years. They keep trying to get me to do the same stuff and I just can't get better. Then, you know, that's going to obviously lead that conversation down a slightly different route. But definitely have a look at the golf swing first, see if there's anything going on in that swing that looks, you know, a little bit off, looks like there's some restriction, looks like there's some movement. But we always need to link that back to their technique, like what are they currently trying to do? Like if they're saying, you know, my coach is trying to get me to turn my hips more, he's trying to get me to, you know, lengthen my backswing, he's trying to get me to not move in these ways, and I just can't do it. And in the golf swing you can clearly see them doing it. You know, that's when I might lead down a route of, you know, starting to test into some of those areas. If their golf swing looks pretty sound and everything looks like it's moving very well, then I'll probably throw the question back to them and say kind of, you know, okay, what do you think
where do you think is
it something you're feeling? Is it something you've been told? Is it something that you just read online? Like, why do you think that you are, you know, not mobile, right? But, you know, both of those questions will probably lead down some kind of assessment, which I think is probably where it would lead this conversation now. So I kind of over the years kind of tailored my approach to assessments. I used to deliver TPI assessments. Which, you know, for those of you guys that listen to the first podcast, you would know a little bit about what TPI and what that is. Now I kind of do my own variation of things that I've picked up from many different places, like from the medical world, from like pain assessments, from you know, some strength movements, some stability testing, still some TPI stuff in there, and I've kind of like put all of this stuff together and kind of made my own assessment. But that assessment will obviously look different to everyone that comes in, because if we do an initial assessment on the hips and we notice identifying hips, and we're going to go further down the hips, right?
Diving into certain areas, which is depending on client to client.
Exactly, and for anyone who's done a TPI assessment, you'll see how kind of surface level that assessment is. It's very much like, you know, can you touch your toes? Yes or no. Can you rotate this much? Yes or no. Can you do things? Yes or no. Which is good for a baseline level, and I think as a surface level test, you know, it can be useful for a lot of people to.
I think it does its job in certain places.
Like people go, okay, maybe I don't have enough rotation there, maybe I don't move well enough there. But I think, you know, for both of us, I know, and I know what you do as well, is then digging deeper into that, right? One, is it important? Does it actually matter for you? Is it affecting you in your golf swing? 2, is it affecting you in terms of any pain or anything you're experiencing? 3, is it affecting your performance in the gym? if you're trying to add power but you've got these restrictions, that's going to limit the amount of work you can get done in the gym. And also, is it, what's the root cause of some of these problems as well? Are you restricted here because of another reason?
Yes.
And digging a little bit deeper into some of this stuff. So, all fun stuff. All fun stuff. I know. We love diving into clients and their problems and trying to figure them out. It's fun, by the way. If anyone does want to come down, it's not a prod and poke situation.
Absolutely not.
It very much is like an evaluation. But I think to answer the question in brief is completely different for whoever walks in. 100%. I don't think anyone ever has had the same assessment from me twice.
Never.
They would have done if they'd have come to me probably 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's good about this. Like, we're learning as we go.
Oh, 100%. Me being slightly newer to just training golfers and assessing golfers, I've definitely kind of, like you started with the TPI, looked at that. To be honest, I hold my hands up. I've never done a full TPI screening. I just kind of saw it and thought, right, that's not for me. That's not for any of the golfers that I work with. I can't see that benefiting them. So like you have kind of taken on different things and from different kind of research that is out there already and different S&C coaches and things. And there's a big school of belief that screenings aren't actually that important, that you might not need to do it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I think, like you said, we're both kind of whittling down our assessments and our screenings to a more streamlined version of how we can get to those problem areas as quickly as possible.
Yeah, off the back of my TPI course that I did, I've kind of done a couple of the extra seminars that they offered, little bits. And they basically said, like, until you've done, a decent amount of assessments, you won't really be that good at it. So I basically set myself a challenge after I qualified, and I tried to do 100 assessments in a month.
Yeah.
So I basically was like, anyone who wants to get tested, here we go.
I
was offering for free, and I was basically saying, like, I tried to get a mix of like young guys, young girls, older guys, older girls, middle-aged, high handicappers, low handicappers, pros. I was just basically anyone who wanted to be tested, I was testing. So I did like 100 in a month, which was insane. But off the back of that, I got good at understanding. Like, I could almost see from one test, like, I could predict what the other was going to be.
100%, yeah.
And I think that experience is fundamental. So,
absolutely.
I always say that I learned a lot from doing that qualification and a lot from doing those tests. But I think as anything, you kind of, as you grow, you kind of have to find your own way
100%.
through things. And also find ways that you better help that person a little bit more. Like, I think improving your knowledge through that is key. So, it takes, I don't know how many assessments I've done. That'd be a great number to find out. I think on my TPI app, I've got, the last time I checked, I think I had 290.
That's pretty impressive.
But that's only the TPI ones.
There you go.
That's a lot of golfers.
That's a lot of golfers.
That's a lot of hips. That's double the number,
That's
right?
a lot of hips.
It's a lot of hips.
That's a lot of hips.
But yeah, I felt like I needed to do it because I feel like I needed to play catch up for, you'll be the same with personal training, right? Until you've done a certain amount of hours personal training.
Oh, you just,
you're just constantly learning. And then you kind of reach this level where you don't feel like you're picking much up from it. And then that's where you might go and further your education and do stuff. And I feel like I needed to do that. So I kind of played catch up and a bit crazy. But maybe 400 goals. Let's say 400. I'm going to take that number. I don't know.
400.
Yeah.
800 hips.
That's 800 hips. I don't know how many real hips. So there's probably some fake hips in there as well. Let's say 750
some artificial
hips.
ones in there as well.
Okay, so how about yourself? So if someone comes in for you, they say, Sam, I move awful. I've been told, I'm really stiff. I sit at a desk, I can't touch my toes. Good luck with me, they say. Good luck with me. I hope you like a challenge. That's the word one you get. I hope you like a challenge.
And you know what? I absolutely love a challenge. I've had clients come in to me here at the studio, not realising they need to work on mobility. We just put them through a proper training program, a training routine of actually training full range of motion, and then come out months after and going, God, I'm so much more mobile. But we haven't done any mobility training. It's like, because you can just do it through full range of motion exercises. So I think it all, like, again, I'm going to say it again, it all depends. I'm going to have to get a t-shirt that's made up that says it all depends. It depends, because if we've got someone who's got a 9-to-5 job, sat down at a desk, say they drive an hour to work, an hour back from work, they're sat down in that seated position, shoulders hunched forward, right, we have to address that first. I think also if they're saying that they are playing and after 12 holes, 13, 14 holes, they're getting some pain in the back, that's where I'd like to address first. Yeah. It like I said, it depends on their priorities and what they see. oftentimes it's tricky with clients, making them realise, well, actually they think this is a priority. From our experience, saying, I think you're okay there, let's try and just push you in a bit more of this direction. And I think that's when it gets a little bit tricky. You get golfers saying they've been sent in from a coach saying that they don't actually move too well and they can't get into certain positions. Then fine, let's do a little bit of work on your thoracic rotation, let's do some core stuff, and actually quickly, it might be a really quick fix. Other people, it might be a super tight hip and say they can't get any internal rotation into their lead side. Then right, we're going to have to really break that down and really get into that, do that some release work, but also do some real strength work at those 4 ranges of motion. And because I don't know about you, but a lot of clients, mobility wise, it's a mental thing. They can't get into these positions, so they've told themselves, I just can't do this. So they just stop their body from doing it because they're almost trying to protect themselves. So I think a lot of it is getting them actually to relax and realise that they can get into these positions done correctly.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think this is what's probably going to be interesting for you guys listening, because we definitely come from 2 different sides on this. Like Sam is very much like strength history, strength and conditioning, getting people in the gym, training, and there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of proof, not just in science but in anecdotal, us seeing it as well. You get someone on a decent strength plan, working them for a good range of motion with good exercises, their mobility will improve. Yeah. Like that is fun. That will happen. Like that is proven. Also, you get someone to do some mobility work, the mobility will improve, right? But you won't have the strength added benefit to that. So yes, in a dream world, we would have everybody doing very good strength training. They would probably do some mobility training on top of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And they'd be moving great and they'd be playing great, right? And that's what, when people come to us, that's always what we're going to set our dream at. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to say, okay, we would love you to do this type of strength training, do this type of mobility training. Yeah. The problem I often come across is a lot of the people when they come to see me, they don't like training. Yeah. They don't like going to the gym. Yeah. Like they're not interested, right? If they were, they'd be doing it and they wouldn't be messaging me, right? The problem they've got is they've got a desk job. Yep. They love playing golf. Any opportunity they've got, they're going to go out and play golf. They're going to practice. They're going to spend their time at the driving range. They're going to spend their time on the chicken green, whatever it is.
Why should I be spending an hour in the gym, Joe, doing mobility work or doing some strength work when I'm going to be losing an hour on the driving range?
Correct. So for me, I kind of played this game of, right, well, you're probably not going to get in the gym, right? That's probably not going to happen yet. Yep. I'll change your mind on that. We'll go through the habits. We're going to do a really good podcast on behavioural change and all that stuff. Like that's going to be really fun. But for now, I'm just going to accept that you're in this like barrier up, I'm not going to the gym training mindset. Fine. Can you give me 10 minutes a day? Yeah. Can you give me 10 minutes a day in front of your TV? Yeah. All right. Yeah. You want to get to scratch. You want to do whatever. Like you can give me 10 minutes in front of your TV, right? Yeah. So then can you basically then get them in the mindset of, right, you don't want to be hurt. You want to play better. Can you give me 10 minutes in front of the TV with a couple of tools around you, maybe following a video of mine, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. And the difference you get from that is, what I've seen from mobility training also is they will instantly feel better. Like after they get up from that 10 minutes, they're going to feel better. Yeah. They'll be like, oh, it wasn't too bad. Yeah. Where you get someone in the gym, you get them to do a hard training session for an hour, they're going to feel worse. Yeah. And that's the battle we always have to play of like, what is going to be absolutely best for you and what are we actually going to be able to get you to do. Yeah. Right. And I think for me, if I just get people on a baseline level of mobility, and sometimes I even go even further baseline of just like getting people to go through some like stretching flows, right, which will have some benefit and it will get some breathing work done and it will help them relax a little bit. But then we build up to the mobility, and then we might build up to the gym, right? And I think for understanding how mobility works, there's many different ways that we can improve the way that we move. Yeah. And it's just going to be finding a way that's going to suit you in your current schedule and what restrictions you have. I think it's going to be key. But yeah, I think that's quite interesting. You went straight to the strength side because I don't do that.
Well, no, typically you're right. That is kind of where I go to. However, I've done stuff on driving ranges.
You're a better salesman than me. You can sell it better.
I've done things on driving ranges, setting up a bed and just doing some release work, just doing some mobility work on people. And then you get that instant feedback of them, right, let's call it the hips. Let's say they're struggling to get internal and external rotation on their, let's say their right hip for a right-handed golfer. Do some work on that, do a little bit of release work. Then you can get them straight out hitting balls with their coach going, oh wow, this feels so much easier. Yeah. Right, now they've seen the result, they're going to adhere to it. They're going to stick to it. Yeah. Whereas I think that's the hard bit to get golfers doing mobility work is they don't see the benefit.
Yeah. I think the other way, like, I know we're going a bit off the main question. But I think another thing with the mobility that this is another big reason why I program specific mobility work is it's a really good selling point to say it's basically like having a physio in your house.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way I sometimes say it to people, like you go to the physio and the physio does manipulation on you and it gets rid of your pain or it gets rid of that restriction or it just makes you feel great, right? You can do that yourself.
Yeah.
Like you can literally make yourself feel that good by touching yourself in the right place. Take where you want to, right? By using the right tools in the right place, you can make yourself feel really good. And I think when people experience that and they kind of understand how that logic works, it takes me back to this kind of original question you asked me of like mobility and flexibility.
Yeah.
And I think that mobility is more than, I know I said it's your ability to move, but it's also the condition of the tissues, like how well do those tissues articulate, how well do they slide over each other, like what is the quality of the tissue. Like it shouldn't hurt to press tissue,
no.
But there's plenty of spaces in your body that we can press and then it's going to hurt, right? So it's improving the quality, improving the condition, and that's something that for me personally I don't always get from strength training. I don't always get that level of release and quality of tissue.
Yeah.
Definitely you can get an improved amount of movement.
Yes.
But for me personally, again, this is not backed by science, so I can't say that there's studies to say this, but I don't notice the improvement in slide, in quality of tissue, in release of the skin over the tissue. Like that's not something I've experienced, and that's coming from someone who's done years and years of strength training. Yeah. So my mobility in general was okay. Like I could get my arm clearly over the top of my head. Yeah. I could probably drop down into a deep squat. Yeah. My torso would rotate okay, but I still had these little niggles or these little kind of soft spots that I needed to, only from probably 5 years now of like consistent mobility training has that freed up.
I think 100%. I think it's really interesting you kind of going onto you there, and I think sometimes I forget that. So I don't know if you guys know or not, I was a professional dancer before I was a PT. So motion has always been so important, and I have always been flexible. It has never been an issue for me. Yep. So I can't really say, right, I've done strength training now for 10 years or so. My body's not worked because of that. I think I've always had that.
Right, like I was strong and stiff.
Yeah.
That's the way I was strong. I was really strong, but I was rigid.
Yeah. Whereas flexibility for me and my background has always been so important, and I absolutely love stretching. I love mobility work, and I think that's just from doing it for years and years and needing to do it. Like for me, motion is lotion. If I can't move correctly, like ask my girlfriend, I am miserable. Like it affects my life. Do you know what I mean? If I'm not as flexible as I feel like I could be, or if I'm not as mobile and rotating well, or I've had a bit of a back problem the last few months that's just clearing up, that's really affected me. So I will do everything I can to improve that.
So I think it's probably then fair to say like you've never probably experienced like what it's like to be stiff.
Oh, 100%. Like yeah, 100%.
You've never gone for a period of like hard gym training without doing the bits.
Absolutely. So I can't talk from that.
Yeah, it's like from years of like constantly being stiff.
Yes.
And moving. I wasn't stiff to the point where when I was then playing golf, I wasn't. You wouldn't say that I was restricted.
Absolutely.
But I was rigid. I was stiff. I was like, it's all about when you're training. It's all about stability, right? You're all trying to make yourself as stable as possible. Yeah. And I was really stiff and stable, but I was, I couldn't move great in some positions. Yeah. Where for me, was adding the mobility into that
has enabled you to move slightly better and feel
feeling freer in that sense,
which is really interesting.
Which I think is also really interesting when I speak to people, because I really try and dig into their how that actually feels to them, because I've never played golf with restriction. Yeah. And you probably haven't either. So that's hard for us to put us into that category. Yeah. In the same way that probably when you work with people, you've never been really overweight.
Absolutely.
So you don't know what it feels like to walk and have your legs rubbed together. Yeah. Right? I do, because sometimes I've got a little chunky between the upper thigh, which is nothing wrong with that. But you've never experienced what it's like to be overweight. Yeah. Which then means it's very hard to put yourself in that mindset. Absolutely. So we have to do our best to just listen to how that feels. Yeah. And I think that's why the questions that we ask when people come in for, let's call it a screening, is really important, because it's how do you feel swimming off? Do you feel restricted? Yeah.
And you can't quantify that. It's not like, right, I'm weak. Can you squat your body weight? That's an easy kind of. We can do those tests. How high can you jump? How fast can you swing the golf club? They're quantifiable things that we can measure and look at and go, right, this, that's slightly under average. We can train that to get that. There's no way of getting someone to run through some movements and say, how do you feel? That it's just, we can't test that. We can't test against that. So it's an interesting one.
And you mentioned earlier, like with people, self-diagnosing these restrictions and how they then perform. I've definitely measured people that say they feel stiff, they feel restricted to swing the golf club. And actually, when you measure them, and they've, you can measure, you make that quantifiable, right? Like how much rotation do you have here? And actually, when you then get them back to swing the golf club, and I just put a radar in front of them and say, like, I just want you to swing it as hard as you can. Suddenly they're moving so much better. They're moving so much quicker. And it's almost as if you've released the shackles off them, right? But when they feel like they're restricted, and when they've been told they're restricted, they just swing within themselves.
Absolutely.
And then it looks bad. Like you look like you're someone who's got restrictions, where actually if you just let people go, and I think as you said before, when someone first comes in, whenever I get someone to swing the golf club in here in the studio or do whatever, I just put a radar in front of them and then just said, like, gradually just work your speed up. Because if people are thinking of, it's another reason why people might be restricted, but thinking of a swing thought or apprehensive over a shot, that also can add restriction. It can add muscle tension and actually make you swing the golf club worse. So we want to always know what your full capability is with the golf club, without the golf club. And then that gives us a bit of an idea of how you might feel. So onto that then, let's go on to some testing. So what type of tests might you do with someone? I know you said like you're not massive in like the specific mobility, but if you were going to do some mobility tests, like what areas of the body would you look at and how would you test that?
Perfect. So big one for me is looking at hips. I'm a bit of a hip nerd. I love looking at how the hips move and load. I think that's so important for golf. So my favourite one is the 90-90.
Nice.
That is just my favourite one. Yes, it might not be my first one, but if we can diagnose that and if we can get that correctly, I feel like there's so many benefits that increase by doing that correctly and learning how to move through that.
I know
properly.
It's harder like in audio, but maybe try and explain it. Like, how would you, let's say someone's at home, they're listening to you, like Sam said, he's a hip nerd and you need to do the 90-90. Like, how would someone do that? Like, can they test at home?
Yeah, of course you can, absolutely. So what I actually do is I start with a bit of a regression of the 90-90. So let's say if you're sitting down onto your bum, feet out in front of you.
Sam, they can't see you, right?
To the floor. I'm still demonstrating,
they can't see you.
But I need to be able to do it and talk at the same time. So you're sat down on the floor, feet down in front, legs bent. You want enough space kind of in between your legs that you could fit your knee if you were twisting it in. So if you've got the bottom half of your leg, you can fit that in there. You're going to place your hands behind you, so you've got your body weight onto your hands, leaning slightly back. What that's going to do is just create a bit more space in the hips to allow you to rotate. From there, you're going to keep your feet still, keep your heels on the floor. You're going to try and rotate your knees, let's say over to the right. So then we're going to create that 90-90 shape. We've got a right angle in the right leg, right angle in the left leg. We're going to then rotate over to the other side. What we're looking for here, ideally, is both knees to be down onto the floor, okay? If that feels nice and loose, perfect. What we're going to do, we're going to take a step up. You're now going to have your arms out in front of you. So you're sitting up now, so we've not got our weight on our hands. And we retest, we do the same things. Take the knees over to the right, take the knees over to the left. And we just kind of check in and see where, if there is any pain, if there's any restriction, if we can't get both knees down. So let's say if we're going over, knees over to the right, and we can't get that left knee down to the floor, that's our left hip internal rotation, which is going to affect, for right-handed golfers, our follow through there. That's kind of that's my favourite test. That's my favourite thing, because I think it checks a lot of boxes for me. Not only is it testing out our hips, but it's also seeing how your back can move and load and things like that, which obviously we know the golf movement isn't just the hips, it's all connected.
No, I think you've done a pretty good job of explaining that.
I mean, if there is video of this, there's me doing it and trying to do it standing up.
I'll tell you what we need is we need you to film it and then we'll stick it up on
We would also
Instagram.
do that, yes.
So I think all of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast we'll post onto the Macro Golf Studio Instagram. That'd be the best place to go.
Yeah.
So Macro Golf _studio, Macro _golf _studio.
Underscore. Let's have
Sam's checking right now exactly what our Instagram page is, which we should know. But yeah, if you want to go and Sam will do a video for you. He'll post it on there, and you can do that as a test.
Macro_golf_studio.
There we go.
Macro Go Studio will come up.
We'll come up. Yeah, we're gonna be top one. And there's loads of other stuff you can get on there, loads of exercises and loads of stuff. So it's definitely worth giving us a follow. So good. So after you've checked someone's hips, like if that's all good, where else might you go? Like, do you work your way up to torso? But like, where do you draw the line with testing here? And you know, we might maybe actually I've got a PDF that I'll make available for everyone if they want to do a free mobility test, which from my ones. But I'm trying to think if there's any areas you would say is as important as the hips. You've told me this before, and I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Do you do a seated torso one?
I would do a seated torso one. I prefer standing, to be honest. I prefer a standing torso rotation test, just because I think it's a bit more applicable to the golf swing.
Yeah.
And then if I do see any kind of discrepancies there, standing, I'd seat them down and just look at it a bit more when we've got our lower body anchored, and we can really kind of delve into that. That's where I would go. I'd go standing first, and then if we're seeing anything that we need to look at, then go seated. But I know that's where you slightly differ, maybe.
Yeah, like I just find it really interesting to have this conversation. That's kind of why I asked you, because both those two tests you said are your favourite tests. I don't do either of them.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just how I think these things have gone now, where like we're testing the same things, but in different ways. You are testing hip mobility, like that's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
A little bit lower back in there, and then as you're doing the other test, you're testing thoracic spine rotation, you're testing other stuff going on, and I'll do the same thing but just in different ways.
Yeah.
And I think as we develop these kind of assessments, I think even day to day, I'll test something in a different way day to day.
Oh, 100%.
If I've got someone that really struggles to get on off the floor, for example, then I'm not going to get them to lay down to do some of these tests. So I think just when people say that this is the test for this, I will always be a little bit.
That's 100%. That's what I'm always worried about, seeing claims like that online and things.
And I think that's for everyone that's listening. If you ever see anything that says like this is the only way to do this, like just be a little bit wary of that, because there's some stuff that I've taken that's come from physios, and I'll give a good shout out to Amanda, whose Instagram name has changed actually. It's now Therapy Golf UK.
Oh. She's
changed her name. So definitely go and give her a follow, because a lot of the tests that I do have come from some of the tests that she does. There's a million different ways to test this stuff, and that's kind of my point that I want to get across of assessments. So what would you do if you had someone come in who had loads of restrictions? Like, where would be the point you would then say, is that when you would then take them down the strength route and say, look, this is, if you start working on this stuff, this will improve?
I think so. My favourite go-to exercises are ones that we can work on strength and mobility simultaneously, because like we've said, depending on lifestyle factors, time is always going to be 100%. An issue. So like my favourite ones to do are kind of Jefferson curls, things like that, starting loading those movements there, starting kind of loading frog stretches and things like that, getting knees over toes. It's hard to say I've got a set kind of this is my priority, because it depends on the client. It depends what their problems are. It's like you said, everyone that comes into the studio who I work with in central London, it's all completely different. So there's not one go-to that I have. It might be that someone's struggles a bit more with ankle dorsiflexion, so we focus on that to start with, because that's stopping them squatting properly. Or it might be that someone can't get into the hinge pattern, so we need to look at that. And that, so it's, I feel like I'm just going to get a tattoo that says it depends, because I'm going there again. I'm going there again.
I suppose my point that I was trying to get to here was like, is there anything that you would say is like, linking back to our original question, let's say for example they failed your hip test and they failed your torso test, I'm going to put you on the spot, would you go as far as saying to them, this probably is affecting your golf swing?
After having looked at the swing, if it shows in the swing that they're not getting any internal or external rotation in their hips, they're not getting any thoracic rotation there, 100%. And then it becomes hard again, because is that just a skill? Is that just that they don't have the biomechanics to do that, or is it actually that they don't have the skill when a ball's down in front of them to be able to do that? Do you know what I mean? So then I'd probably get them doing setting them up similar to golf movements, without any ball, without a club, and trying to get that movement there. If that's still then impossible, then we know it's affecting the swing.
Yeah.
100%. Because it's like you said, the more things there are to think about on a golf course, the lie, the wind, the pin location, you're gonna just go back to default.
Yeah.
And if you can't move, then yeah, it's definitely affecting your swing.
I'd probably agree. Like, I think I'd probably go as far as saying any restriction in the body is going to affect your golf swing in some way. Yeah. That's like, that's why every single golf swing looks different, right?
100%.
Every single golf swing looks different because we're all different. We all move differently. We all have different tendencies, different strengths, different weaknesses, different immobilities, different sporting backgrounds,
different level proportions,
yeah,
whatever that may be.
You can definitely spot someone, who's played cricket in the past.
Yep.
Shout out to Rob Eagle. Anyone who's played cricket in the past will have quite an identifiable movement like that.
Yep.
Or anyone who's played tennis in the past will have a different movement. Yep. Like, you can spot quite a lot of Americans that have played baseball before. Yes. You can see how they move. Yes. They take hockey's a big one as well for like people that have played hockey in the past have got really, really good ground reaction.
Absolutely.
Like, we're basically just a combination of all of our current situation and our background, and that's why everyone's swinging it differently.
Yeah.
And to say that your body doesn't contribute to that is, I don't agree with that at all. I think that's
100%.
a ridiculous statement. I think 100% your body contributes. The question we probably need to ask is, one, is it affecting performance?
Yeah.
So is that altering something that's actually making you not be able to hit shots that you want to hit or swing the golf club in a consistent manner?
Yeah.
Is it limiting speed and power potentially? Is it limiting your performance basically? I suppose is the easiest way of doing it.
Yeah.
And then also then weighing that up to, is it limiting your performance enough for you to spend the time to then make an intervention on that?
Yeah.
Right. That's where I'd put the golf. If we're going to say golf, does mobility affect golf or whatever, that's kind of the direction I would go.
Yeah.
Where I normally go though, just go away from all this completely, is I just think if you can't move how a human should be able to move, then you should probably fix that.
Absolutely.
Right? If you can't sit on the floor, you should probably fix that.
If you can't sit cross-legged,
you should probably fix that. Like, if you can't be on the floor playing with your kids for 10 minutes without your back hurting, probably should fix that, right? If you can't crawl, if you can't walk, these are fundamental human movements that if these break down, mostly because of the life that we live in terms of, being sat at a desk, driving a car, walking with shoes on, we probably need to do some kind of work to maintain our normal human movement. And if you're lacking any of that, then it's probably worth doing something to fix it. Because I think the more that we can just maintain our, our regularity, the better we're going to be. And I think to link that back to golf, if you can move like a human, you can probably swing the golf club pretty well.
Oh, absolutely.
We should be able to rotate. We don't need excessive. You don't need to go above and beyond with rotation in your hips and your torso.
No, 100%. Yeah.
It's just if you can move how a human body should be able to move, then you should be able to swing the golf club pretty well.
Yeah.
And if you've lost some of that movement, that might be affecting you in your golf. That's probably the simplest way to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad that makes sense. So for the guys listening and to tie up for today, is there anything fundamental you think people should go away on and consider in terms of mobility? If someone is thinking that they are lacking mobility and it is affecting their golf, where would you recommend they start? Or is there anything you think they should go away and do to start working on some of this stuff?
I think the best thing to do is like Joe said, we're going to chuck this free PDF in the link for the episode, and I would just test yourself. Grab a friend, test each other, see what you come up with. Have a look at your swing. See how it compares with other people. Have you ever been told by your coach? I've had a lot of PGA pros pass over clients to me because their clients just can't get into certain positions. Have you ever been told that? And then maybe it's time to try and do something about it. I think a big one here, and I know we're going to do an episode on this as well, is pain. Do you finish a round of golf and are you in pain? That is wrong. So many of my clients think that just becomes the norm. Yeah. If that is you, then yes, we need to do some mobility work, 100%.
Yeah, and strengthening probably.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That,
right?
Yeah. So we'll give the PDF. We'll give you guys free access to this PDF. What I'd also say is if because not all golf coaches are as good as the ones that Sam speaks to, you quite often will find that you might just be stuck with a specific movement. So you might find that there's a specific movement that the golf coach is trying to get you to do, and no matter how many drills, how many movements you try and do, you just can't get it. That might be worth going and checking out. Is there something going on here that's actually stopping me physically being able to do this movement, right? Yeah. It's not always a comprehensive like mindset problem. Sometimes it is a body problem.
Absolutely.
And just checking that and just making sure that, you know, is that problem in the body, yes or no, and just giving yourself that information. So there's like, I think in this PDS I think there's 8 tests that will kind of cover some of these main areas. So definitely again checking that, and then obviously seeing where you are. Good, mate. I think we can round that up for today. Episode 2.
Absolutely.
Smash.
Like always, guys, if there are any questions kind of regarding mobility, or if you want us to have a look at anything, just shout us a DM, shoot us over a message, and we will get back to you. We will try and work with as many of you as possible, because I think, like we said in the first episode, it is our mission to kind of spread this knowledge out there to as many golfers as possible, because it's so underutilized. I don't think golfers specifically know this stuff, so we're trying to get this message out there.
Agreed. How do people get hold of you, Sam? Where can I send you a message?
Sam Bennett Golf PT, or the email through macrogolfstudio.com.
Yep. Love it. At Joe_macrogolf for me, and obviously go and follow the studio, macro_golf_studio.
Absolutely.
Send in any questions you've got, send in any requests, and we'll get them covered as quickly as possible. Till then, guys, see you on the next episode.
See you later, guys.